At my cousin Nathan's engagement party, I was sat on a wobbly lawn chair behind the DJ booth, next to a stack of plastic cups. His fiancée smirked and said, "That's the area for extras." So I stood up, grabbed my gift, and told her, "Extra this," right before Nathan practically dove over the dessert table trying to stop me. But let me rewind. My name's Connor. I'm 31, work in product design, and I've always been the quiet one in the family. The one who listens more than he speaks, who shows up, brings a decent gift, and stays out of the spotlight. That's just who I am. Growing up, I was never the loudest or the flashiest, but I liked it that way. While my extended family got louder and more competitive over the years, I kept my head down, built a solid career, and focused on living a life I didn't need to broadcast at every holiday dinner. Still, there's a line between keeping to yourself and being treated like you're invisible, and that line? It's been getting blurrier with every family event for the past few years. I come from one of those big, boisterous families where everyone thinks they're the main character. You know the type. My mom's one of 5 siblings, and all of them had at least 2 kids. The holidays are chaos. Think plastic folding chairs, mismatched casseroles, and about 16 people talking at once. And while most of us are relatively normal, there are a few standout personalities. Chief among them is my Aunt Denise, Nathan's mom, who has always had a talent for 2 things: passive-aggressive compliments and building a social hierarchy out of thin air. She's the kind of woman who'll hug you at Thanksgiving and say, "Oh honey, you look tired. Are you getting enough iron?" Or corner you during dessert to ask, "So, any prospects yet?" No? Well, not everyone needs to settle down, I suppose. My cousin Nathan, her pride and joy, is cut from the same cloth. From kindergarten on, he was the golden child, the straight-A student, the athlete, the prom king, the one who just gets it. And no matter what the rest of us did, it was never quite enough to match up. I didn't resent Nathan, not at first. We were close as kids, actually. But somewhere around college, things started to shift. He became more curated. Always dressed like he was headed to a vineyard tasting. Always dating women who seemed auditioned for the role. By the time he met Vanessa, his now fiancée, he had fully evolved into a Real Housewives supporting character. Vanessa is what you'd get if you put ambition, superficial charm, and a Pinterest board into a blender. She's gorgeous, yes, but in that way where you can't quite tell what she actually looks like under the filters and flawless contour. She's always on, always watching, always subtly evaluating. And from day one, she looked at me like I was some backup character who'd wandered onto the wrong set. The first time I met her was at Nathan's birthday dinner 2 years ago. She was warm enough, but her eyes flicked over me like I was a menu item she'd already decided not to order. I remember offering to split the check with Nathan, just being polite, and she gave this little laugh and said, "Ah, that's cute. You guys still do that?" It wasn't just the words. It was the tone, like she was genuinely surprised people like me existed. Since then, I've seen her a handful of times, family gatherings, holidays, the occasional birthday, and every single time, I felt like I was being quietly sized up and dismissed. It's not even overt rudeness. It's worse. It's that soft, smiling indifference. Like I don't matter enough to dislike, only to overlook. Still, when their engagement was announced, I tried to be gracious. I sent a congratulatory text. I RSVP'd yes to the party. I even spent more than I probably should have on their gift, a handmade Italian espresso set from a local boutique. I don't drink coffee, but I remembered Nathan once mentioning Vanessa was a coffee snob, and I figured, why not? It was wrapped neatly in tissue paper with a card that said, "Wishing you years of strong coffee and stronger love." Cheesy? Maybe, but sincere. The party was held at Denise's backyard, which she'd transformed into what she proudly called a rustic chic lounge experience. Translation: rented white tents, string lights, and a DJ who looked like he was about 17. There were clusters of couches, cocktail tables with charcuterie boards, and a bar with its own velvet rope. I arrived on time, maybe a bit early, and dropped off the gift at the designated table near the front. Or at least, what I thought was the designated table. That's when Denise swooped in. "Oh, Connor, sweetheart," she said, fluttering over in a floaty champagne-colored dress. "Actually, we're organizing the gifts by, family tiers. Could you just maybe place yours in the back? By the drinks." I blinked. "Family tiers?" She laughed, as if I'd said something adorable. "Just for fun. You know, immediate family in the front, then extended, and then plus ones and guests. She gestured vaguely toward the back corner of the yard. It's all being photographed for Vanessa's blog. I hesitated, gift still in my hands. Right? Sure. I walked it to the back, passing rows of smiling relatives sipping Prosecco and posing for Instagram stories. When I finally found the so-called gift section she'd referenced, it was a single folding table next to the bar trash bin. Two other packages sat there, a wine bag and a wrapped box that looked like it came from a gas station convenience shelf. I stared at them for a moment, then carefully added mine to the mix. Trying to shake it off, I made my way toward the main area, only to be intercepted by Vanessa herself. "Oh, Connor," she said, her smile razor thin. "Didn't see you come in. You look comfortable." It was 92 degrees. I was wearing a short-sleeve button-up and slacks. "Thanks," I said. She cocked her head. "Just make yourself at home, okay? We set up a little space for, you know, overflow seating. It's super cozy." She gestured behind the DJ booth. And there it was, a solitary plastic lawn chair, wobbling slightly on the uneven grass. Behind it, a stack of solo cups and a cooler. No shade, no table, just a spot. For me. I forced a smile. "Overflow, huh?" She gave a faux apologetic shrug. "Well, you know how it is. Everyone wanted to be here." I didn't say anything, just nodded and walked to the chair like I was doing it on purpose. Sat down. The thing squeaked like a mouse being stepped on. From where I was, I could hear the bass thumping from the speakers and the clink of ice cubes and overpriced cocktails. But no one else was within 10 feet of me. I wasn't just at the party. I was at the party's designated exile zone. And then, as I shifted to get comfortable, Vanessa leaned over to the DJ and said, with that same smirk, "That's the area for extras." She didn't whisper. She wanted me to hear. I froze. Extras. I felt something in my chest twist, not quite rage, but a cold sort of clarity. Like I'd been watching this whole dynamic unfold for years, and now it was finally being said out loud. I was an extra, the side character, the one you invite for optics, not connection. I looked at her. She wasn't even facing me anymore. Already back in her element, surrounded by bridesmaids and champagne. And that's when I stood up. I grabbed the gift off the back table, walked past the velvet rope, and made my way toward the exit. I was halfway there when Nathan finally noticed me, his eyes going wide. "Connor, wait, what are you doing?" He stepped in front of me, knocking a plate of macarons off the dessert table in his haste. I looked at him, calm as I could manage, just taking back my extra gift. "What?" His brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Ask your fiancée," I said. "Or your mom. They seem to have the seating chart memorized." And just like that, I kept walking, right past the stunned aunts, the blinking DJ, the wide-eyed cousins. No one said a word. Not yet, anyway, because what came after that? That's when it really started. I didn't go no contact after that party. I wish I had. That would have made everything simpler. But family rarely allows for clean exits, especially in families like mine, where everything is wrapped up in obligations and appearances, and no one ever talks about the tension until it explodes like a shaken soda can on a hot day. For a few weeks after the engagement party, things were quiet. No one reached out. No apologies. No clarification. Nothing. And I didn't chase them. I went back to work, met up with my friends, even started going to the gym again for the first time in months. I told myself I'd finally hit the point where I didn't care what they thought of me. But that was a lie. Because I did care. Maybe not about Vanessa, but about Nathan. About my aunt. About the fact that my mom called me the next day, not to ask if I was okay, but to say I really embarrassed Denise. I remember holding the phone to my ear in silence while she rattled off things like, "She went to all that trouble, and Vanessa's just a little high-strung. You know how brides can be. And honestly, it's not worth making a scene over a chair." A chair. That's all it was to them. Never mind the years of subtle exclusion, the accidental oversights, the barbed compliments. To them, I'd had a tantrum over plastic furniture. My mom even said, "You've always been so sensitive, Connor. You just need to let things roll off your back." I hung up on her. For the first time in my life. After that, I didn't hear from Nathan for 2 whole months. Not a call. Not a text. Nothing. And then one afternoon in mid-July, he messaged me out of nowhere. "Hey man, can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Sure." He called. His voice was cautious, like he was trying not to trigger a landmine. Look, I've been thinking about what happened at the party. Vanessa shouldn't have said that. I should have spoken up. I didn't realize it hit you like that. I didn't realize I was supposed to accept being treated like background noise, I replied. There was a pause. I get it. And I'm sorry. Really. I almost believed him, until he added, Vanessa's been under a lot of stress. The wedding planning's intense, and she didn't mean anything by it. There it was. The pivot. The PR spin. The subtle reframing of events to preserve the status quo. Still, I tried to meet him halfway. I said, if you want us to be close, you've got to stop acting like I'm not part of this family. He replied with something vague about fresh starts and moving forward. And then, right before hanging up, he said, hey, we're doing the bachelor party next month. You in? It was a trip to Vegas. 5 guys. 3 nights. He named everyone going. His college roommate, 2 coworkers, and some friend of Vanessa's brother. I wasn't close with any of them, but I said yes anyway. Not because I wanted to go, because I wanted to believe Nathan was trying. And for the first day, it did feel that way. We flew in on a Thursday, checked into the suite, grabbed drinks by the pool. Nathan bought a round and made a big show of saying, Connor's with us. Put it on my tab. For a few hours, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd overreacted. That maybe we could actually reset things. But on the second night, everything changed. We were at one of those overpriced rooftop bars, the kind that plays deep house remixes of 2000s pop songs and charges $27 for a cocktail in a glass the size of a shot. I was nursing a beer when one of the guys, Brad, a smug finance bro type who looked like he moisturized with protein powder, leaned over and said, So, how do you know Nathan? I blinked. He's my cousin. Brad laughed. Wait, really? I thought you were someone's +1. I gave a tight smile. Nope. Blood relative. He looked surprised for a beat, then shrugged and walked off. I tried to brush it off. But the next morning, it happened again. We were in the suite, getting ready to head out for brunch, when I overheard Nathan in the next room talking to someone on speakerphone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. It was just one of those hotel layouts where the walls might as well be paper towels. Yeah, it's mostly close friends. Well, Vanessa's brother's friend, Brad, my old roommate Jake, and some of the guys from work. Oh, and Connor's here too. Yeah, my cousin. Kind of a last-minute invite. Last minute. My stomach twisted. I bought my plane ticket weeks ago. When I stepped into the living room, Nathan gave me a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ready to hit the strip? I nodded, but inside, something cracked a little deeper. It got worse. That night, we went to a club, one of those velvet rope monstrosities with flashing lights and bottle service. Nathan had reserved a booth. When we got there, the hostess asked how many were in the party. Nathan said 5. I said it's 6. He gave me a look like I'd farted in church. Oh right, 6. But when we got to the booth, there were only 5 seats. Literally. 5. Brad, of course, snagged the end cushion. The others filled in. Nathan sat in the middle. I hovered for a moment, expecting someone to shift or make room. No one did. Finally, I grabbed a stool from the bar and pulled it up to the edge of the table. Nathan didn't say anything. Neither did I. The next morning, I left the hotel early and got breakfast by myself. I texted Nathan to say I'd meet them at the airport. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Back home, I decided I was done trying. No more forcing conversations. No more attending events just to be treated like an afterthought. I started ignoring family group chats. Skipped my uncle's birthday cookout. And when Vanessa sent out her wedding website link, I didn't click it. I figured I'd get the invite eventually. Or maybe not. A month passed. Then 2. Then my mom called, Giddy. Connor, have you gotten your invitation yet? The wedding boxes are so beautiful. I paused. Boxes? Oh yes, Vanessa and Nathan sent custom invitation boxes. With monogrammed chocolates and everything. Yours should be arriving any day now. It didn't. 3 more weeks went by. I said nothing. I just waited. Until finally, one afternoon, my neighbor knocked on my door holding a small, crushed cardboard box. No ribbon. No glitter. No monogrammed chocolate. Hey, I think this got dropped at our place by mistake. Looks like it got caught in the rain. Inside was a bent card with smeared ink. The RSVP line was blank. The return envelope was missing. I sat on my couch staring at it for a long time. Eventually, I called my mom. Hey, just curious, what did your invite box look like? Oh, it was stunning, she gushed. Black velvet, gold wax seal, a handwritten note from Vanessa herself. I described what I got. Silence. That must be a mistake, she said. It wasn't. Because 3 days later, I ran into Aunt Denise at the grocery store. And as she loaded overpriced cheese into her cart, she said, "So glad you're still coming, even after all the drama." Vanessa wasn't sure you'd be comfortable attending, so she tried to keep it low pressure. That's why we sent the simpler invite. I stared at her. The simpler invite. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Connor. Not everything's about you. I wanted to scream, to throw the mangled box at her feet and walk away. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Something icy and calm settled over me. And that was the moment it clicked. They didn't want me at the wedding. Not really. But they wanted to look like they included me. Just enough to keep up appearances. Just enough to avoid the optics of outright exclusion. It was worse than not being invited. It was being strategically minimized. And that's when the gears in my head began to turn. Because if they wanted me to be the quiet extra, the harmless background character, they were about to find out I'd been paying attention all along. And I knew exactly where to hit them next. But I'll tell you what I did later. Because first, things got even uglier. I didn't go to the wedding. That's probably the simplest way to say it. But of course, nothing about it was actually simple. Skipping it wasn't some dramatic decision where I slammed a door and declared, "That's it. I'm done." It was more like watching a bridge rot plank by plank, until the day came when it collapsed under its own weight. Quiet. Inevitable. And no one heard the splash. I never sent the RSVP. Never called to explain. I just faded out like a ghost they never intended to see anyway. And still, for weeks, I kept waiting for someone, anyone, to call. To check in. To say, "Hey, what happened?" But no one did. Not my mom, who had told me to just let things go. Not Nathan, who had called me a last-minute invite behind my back. Not Aunt Denise, who probably considered my absence a win for table symmetry. And certainly not Vanessa, who seemed to enjoy turning family members into furniture arrangements. The wedding happened in early October. A vineyard ceremony upstate. Dozens of pictures circulated in the group, chat I'd muted. Long captions. Golden hour lighting. Hashtags like hashtag Vanessa and Nate ever after. And in not one of those photos, not one, was I missed. I wasn't in the posed family portraits. I wasn't mentioned in the "so grateful for all who came" post. In fact, when I scrolled through the tagged pics on Instagram, it was like I'd never existed in their world at all. It shouldn't have hurt. But it did. And not in the "you forgot my birthday" kind of way. It hurt in the hollow, gut-deep ache of realizing you were never really part of something you thought you belonged to. Like being written out of a story you didn't know was ending. That winter was hard. Not for any single reason. Just the cumulative weight of everything. The loneliness. The anger. The slow unraveling of people I used to trust. There were days when I'd go to work, do what I had to do, and come home without speaking to a soul. I'd open the fridge, realize I hadn't gone grocery shopping in over a week, and just not care. I started losing weight. My skin got pale. My apartment stayed dark most nights, lit only by the cold blue glow of whatever I was mindlessly watching. One night in December, I got sick. Nothing serious, just a nasty flu that laid me out for 5 days. But it was the kind of sick that makes you feel 12 again, sweaty, weak, and wishing someone would bring you soup and tell you it's going to be okay. I remember lying on my couch, shivering under a blanket, and wondering who I could even call. I couldn't think of a single name. That night, I cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears, leaking out like a faucet you forgot to tighten. I felt like a discarded extra in someone else's fairy tale ending. And for the first time in a long while, I truly believed the story might be over for me. But the funny thing about rock bottom? It's the only place where everything is silent enough for you to finally hear yourself think. After that night, something shifted. Slowly, subtly, but definitely. It started with small things. I cleaned the apartment. Not just a surface wipe, but deep cleaned. Tossed out stuff I didn't need, organized the junk drawers, even scrubbed the grout in the bathroom. There was something grounding about it, like reclaiming control in a world that had gone off script. Then I signed up for a pottery class. I know, random, right? But I remembered seeing an ad for it months earlier and thinking, that looks fun, before brushing it off as something people with real social lives do. But now I had time. And I needed to do something with my hands other than scroll through wedding photos of people who'd effectively ghosted me. The first class was awkward. A room full of strangers, soft jazz in the background, and a cheery instructor named Lana who clapped her hands every time someone didn't mess up the clay. I sat at the wheel, hands trembling, feeling ridiculous. But then, something clicked. There was something therapeutic about it. The spinning clay, the resistance, the way it yielded when you applied just the right pressure. It was messy, unforgiving, but weirdly peaceful. Like life, but contained. I kept going. And then I started running again. Not far, just around the neighborhood. I'd pop in earbuds, cue up a podcast or some instrumental playlist, and jog until my lungs ached and the world felt quieter. I started eating better, cooking, even slept more. The next big shift came in the form of an email from a recruiter. They'd seen my portfolio online and wanted to know if I'd be interested in consulting on a new product launch. At first, I thought it was spam. But after a few calls, it turned out to be real. A startup in Portland. They needed help designing the user experience for a health tech app. It wasn't a full-time job, but the pay was generous and the work was interesting. I said yes. That single project turned into 3. By spring, I'd built up enough freelance income to reduce my full-time job to part-time. For the first time since college, I wasn't tied to an office schedule. I had flexibility, freedom, and with that came something I hadn't felt in a long time, clarity. I started journaling. I know, it sounds cheesy, but it helped. I wrote everything down. The way they made me feel, the things I wanted to say but never did, the memories I'd buried under layers of forced politeness. And through those pages, I started realizing something. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't forgettable. I had simply been in the wrong story. You see, people like Vanessa and Denise, they curate their worlds like Instagram feeds. Only the glossy stuff makes it in. Anything messy, inconvenient, or emotionally complex gets cropped out. That's why someone like me, quiet, observant, unwilling to flatter them for approval, was a threat. Not because I was trying to be, but because I didn't fit their aesthetic. And Nathan? He'd always needed to be liked, to be adored. And when that meant choosing between someone who challenged his echo chamber and someone who reinforced it, well, the choice was easy. But that was their story, not mine. And the more distance I put between myself and that toxic dynamic, the more I realized how much space it had taken up in my mind. How many hours I'd spent analyzing conversations, decoding subtext, wondering what I did wrong. When the truth was simple, I hadn't done anything wrong. I just stopped playing a rigged game. And once I stopped playing, I had room to start building again. By early summer, things looked different. I'd landed 2 long-term freelance clients. I'd sold a dozen pieces from a local pottery showcase. Lana invited me to join. My apartment felt like a home. My fridge had actual food in it. I even made a few new friends from the studio. People who didn't care who my cousin was or what family drama I'd left behind. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't Instagram perfect. But it was real. And it was mine. Still, a part of me hadn't forgotten. Not completely. Because as much as I was healing, there was still a bruise. A faint one, but there. The kind that flinches when someone brushes too close. And one day in late June, someone brushed a little too close. It was a text. From my mom. Hey sweetheart, are you free to talk this weekend? Your Aunt Denise is planning a family reunion in August. Everyone's expected to be there. Expected. I stared at the word for a long time. Like it was a summons. Like after everything that had happened, they still thought I'd come running when they snapped their fingers. But this time, I wasn't the same Connor. And I had no intention of playing the extra ever again. Because what they didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that while they were off staging their fairy tale wedding, I'd been quietly writing a different ending. One they wouldn't see coming. One that started the moment I got an email from a local real estate agent about a property just outside of town. A property that used to belong to someone very familiar. And trust me, you're going to want to hear what I did next. It started with a listing. A dull, unremarkable real estate listing that showed up in my email one Tuesday morning, buried between a pottery supply promotion and a spam message about cryptocurrency. The subject line was generic. Opportunity near Crescent Hill, motivated seller. I was one click away from deleting it when something in the preview text caught my eye. Charming farmhouse-style property. Needs TLC. Formerly owned by family estate. I don't know what made me click. Curiosity? Boredom? That idle instinct that pulls you into rabbit holes at 2 a.m.? Either way, when I opened the link and scrolled through the photos, my breath caught. It was that house. The one Aunt Denise had inherited from her father, my grandfather, almost a decade ago. The one she used to flaunt at every family function. The one with the massive wraparound porch and the old apple trees and the garden she never maintained but always claimed as historic. It was for sale. Quietly. No for sale sign. No social media posts. Just a quiet, desperate listing with words like motivated seller and as is condition. And I remembered something. My grandfather hadn't left the house directly to Denise. Not in the will. He'd left it to all 5 siblings equally, with the understanding that they'd share it, maintain it, maybe even rotate holidays there. A family retreat, he called it. But that's not how things played out. Because Denise, being Denise, had convinced the others to sign over their shares. Promised to keep it in the family, swore she'd never sell, said she'd let everyone use it whenever they wanted. Then she put up security cameras, changed the locks, and told everyone the plumbing was bad. It had always bugged me. I remembered overhearing my mom complain about it once, saying, "Your aunt's not technically doing anything wrong, but it's not what Dad wanted." And now? Now she was off floating it in secret. I started doing some digging. Called the agent, pretending to be a prospective buyer. Asked for a tour. She was more than happy to oblige. The house was rough. Faded shutters. Overgrown grass. A rusted swing set in the backyard that looked one storm away from collapse. Inside, it smelled like mothballs and dust. But the bones were good. Hardwood floors. High ceilings. Original moldings. And best of all, it was priced way below market value. Because Denise had let it rot for too long. I thanked the agent, told her I'd think about it, and drove home with my heart pounding. That night, I called a friend from the pottery studio, Rami, a quiet guy with a background in real estate investing. I told him about the house, the family drama, the way it was being sold under the radar. He was intrigued. "You want it for yourself?" he asked. I thought about it. Not exactly. I didn't want to live in that house. Too many ghosts. Too much history. But I didn't want to own it. I wanted to take back what Denise had stolen. Quietly. Legally. Without fanfare. So I made a plan. First, I needed financing. I'd been saving aggressively since I started freelancing, and between that and a small inheritance from my dad's side of the family, I had enough for a down payment. The rest, I could qualify for through a small business loan, especially since I wasn't planning to live in the property, but convert it into a studio and event space. That was the angle, a creative co-op space. Pottery, art, community events. Something the town didn't really have, but badly needed. I ran the numbers. Talked to the bank. Talked to a contractor. Got pre-approved. Then I called the agent back. "I'd like to make an offer," I said. She sounded surprised. "Already?" "Yes. Full asking price. Cash offer. Quick close." A pause. "Great. I'll draft the paperwork." She emailed me the documents the next morning. And there it was, in bold at the bottom of the seller's disclosure. Owner, Denise Mallory. I stared at the name for a long time. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew this was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't just buying a house. I was buying her house. The one she'd lorded over the family for years. The one she'd used as a pawn in her little power games. The one she swore she'd never sell, because legacy matters. And she had no idea who the buyer was, because I didn't use my full name. The offer went through in 4 days. Denise never even showed up to the signing. Her lawyer handled everything. 2 weeks later, I held the deed in my hands. I was the owner of 327 Lawson Lane. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted the timing to be perfect. So while Denise continued living her life as if nothing had changed, bragging about her curated grandparent photos, hosting wine nights for Vanessa and her sorority tier friends, I was quietly transforming the property she thought was beneath her. I hired a contractor. Rami helped me line up the crew. We repainted the exterior, had the landscaping redone, fixed the plumbing, and reinforced the porch beams. I ripped out the dated kitchen fixtures and replaced them with sleek, modern counters. The upstairs bedrooms were converted into studio spaces with natural light and soundproofing. The garage turned into a pottery workshop with full ventilation. It was beautiful, but more than that, it was useful. I applied for a business license, branded the space as the Orchard House Collective, and reached out to every local artist, ceramicist, and nonprofit I could find. Offered free event space for community art nights. Started hosting beginner classes for kids on weekends. collaborated with a local coffee roaster to sell their brews during open studio hours. By August, we had a wait list for studio rentals. And in the center of it all was me. Not as an extra, not as a background character, but as the owner, the creator, the one who saw value where someone else saw a trophy. Still, I said nothing to my family. Not yet, because I knew something they didn't. That family reunion Denise was planning? It was set to be hosted at her beloved farmhouse, the one she still believed was hers. And when I reached out to the new community liaison from the local arts council, who, coincidentally, was organizing a partnership for the reunion space, I asked if she'd mind a small scheduling switch, just a few tweaks, so that when Denise showed up that Saturday afternoon, dressed in her Sunday best and expecting a private family affair, she'd walk into a community open house, filled with artists, families, strangers sipping coffee, and a banner that said, "Welcome to the Orchard House Collective, owned and operated by Reeves." And trust me, that was just the start of what I had planned. The day of the reunion arrived like a storm cloud in slow motion, looming, heavy, inevitable. It was late August, one of those oppressive summer Saturdays where the air feels like wet wool. Cicadas screeched in the trees. The sun baked the pavement, and I was up at dawn, triple-checking every detail. The Orchard House Collective looked immaculate. The fresh white paint on the porch railings gleamed under the morning light. Handmade banners stretched between the apple trees. Long tables were covered in burlap runners, wildflowers in mason jars, platters of local pastries, and 3 urns of artisan coffee. Music floated through the air, light acoustic guitar, played live by a student from one of our weekend programs. Kids ran barefoot through the grass, clutching paintbrushes and clay animals. A small crowd was already trickling in. Neighbors, artists, curious townspeople. The open house was in full swing. And Denise had no idea. Because according to the last email she sent the family group chat, complete with her usual overuse of exclamation points, the family reunion was set for 2 p.m. sharp at the farmhouse. Bring chairs, sunscreen, and your love. What she didn't know was that the farmhouse wasn't hers anymore. And today, she was going to find that out the hard way. I didn't make a speech. I didn't hide in the shadows. I simply stood near the porch steps, coffee in hand, greeting people as they arrived. Every bit the friendly, low-key owner of a community art space. At exactly 1:57 p.m., I saw the silver Lexus roll up the gravel drive. Denise always drove like she was afraid of getting dust on the tires. The car crawled to a stop near the edge of the yard, and from the passenger seat, out stepped Nathan. Even from a distance, I could see the confusion on his face. He looked around at the banners, the booths, the paper fans and the trees. His mouth moved as he said something to Denise, who was still in the driver's seat. Then she emerged, wearing white linen pants, oversized sunglasses, and a wide-brimmed hat that screamed Hamptons in her head. HOA picnic in reality. The two of them stood by the car for a moment, frozen. I sipped my coffee. Nathan spotted me first. His brow furrowed. He started walking toward me, slow at first, then faster. "Connor," he called out, voice a little too loud. What is this?" "A community open house," I said simply. "We host them once a month." Denise finally followed him, heels crunching on the gravel. She looked at me like I was an unexpected hair in her salad. "I'm sorry, what is going on here?" "I thought I'd let you see it for yourself," I said. "Since you invited the entire family to my property." She blinked. "Your property?" I pulled a folded piece of paper from my back pocket. The deed. Highlighted and everything. Bought it in April. Fixed it up. Converted it into a non-profit art space. "You're welcome to take the full tour, if you like." Her face paled beneath the bronzer. You lied." Her voice cracked like thin ice. "I made an offer. You accepted it. I just didn't feel like throwing a parade about it." "You bought it behind my back," she snapped. "You sold it," I said coolly. "Behind everyone's back, including your own siblings. The house Grandpa wanted the family to share? You locked it up, let it rot, then quietly dumped it." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Nathan looked between us. "Wait, you're the one who bought it? You told no one. You told no one you were selling it," I said. "Fair is fair." At that moment, the rest of the family began arriving. Cars lined up along the driveway, cousins and aunts and uncles spilling out in sundresses and baseball caps, holding Tupperware and foldable chairs, looking around with expressions that shifted quickly from confusion to awe. My mom was the first to approach. She looked at the signs, the art booths, then me. Connor, what is all this? The Orchard House Collective, I said. It's mine. I bought the house in April. We're an artist co-op and community studio now. You own this? Her voice was small. I nodded. And the reunion? She asked. I gestured around. You're welcome to stay. There's food, coffee, music. The kids are painting birdhouses under the oak tree. Feel free to make yourself at home. Denise's eyes narrowed. You deliberately timed this to humiliate me. No, I said softly. You did that to yourself. I just gave you the guest list. And I walked away. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because the fallout was already happening. As the family mingled, word spread fast. Cousin Lauren came up and hugged me hard, whispering, "Good for you." My Uncle Jeff clapped me on the back. Even Aunt Carol, who never liked anyone, said, "About time someone shut her up." Denise hovered on the porch, out of place in her resort wear. A few people tried to make small talk, but she waved them off. Eventually, she left, without speaking to anyone else, without saying goodbye. Nathan lingered. He found me near the pottery booth, where I was helping a little girl stamp her initials into a clay pendant. You really did all this? He asked. Yeah. Why? I looked at him. Because I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. So I stopped waiting for permission. He didn't argue, didn't apologize. He just looked down at the clay in the little girl's hands and said, "It's nice." Then he left too. In the weeks that followed, things shifted. My mom called more often, less to scold, more to ask questions. She came by the studio once, brought muffins. Said she was proud of me. That was new. Nathan didn't reach out again. Neither did Denise. I didn't expect them to. But I did get a text from Vanessa. One line. Clever move. Too bad you had to make it about yourself. I laughed and blocked her number. Because here's the thing. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It wasn't about embarrassing anyone or proving a point. It was about reclaiming space I had every right to stand in. About turning the place they used to exclude me from into something bigger than them. Stronger. Real. I didn't just buy the house. I turned it into something beautiful. And I did it without permission, without applause, without playing the part they wrote for me. I was never the extra. I was the author. And the final scene? It belonged to me.